tick tock, time to rock. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning to everyone who's watching from all over the world. I'm your friendly neighborhood philosopher, David Wood, and with me now is the mighty one, Hatun Tash.
Peace of Christ be with you, brother. How are you?
Good. Hatun, before we get started on our topic and so on, why don't you introduce yourself, tell everyone about what you do.
I'm Christian. I'm from Turkey. Currently, I am based in England. What I do, the part which is like linked with this live stream, I guess I engage with Muslims in public platforms. That will be a place called Speaker's Corner, where we get to meet with Muslim missionaries and have debates and discussions, where we get to preach gospel of Christ. Also, I do lots of street preaching and Bible studies in the mosques or around the mosques.
Mm-hmm. All right, and I'm trying to think. Are you the only woman I've ever had on the live streams with me?
I'm sorry if that is the case.
Oh, no. I did have Karen Cross speaking about abortion on here. I'm trying to think, but
okay.
Yeah. Now this is it's very interesting to have Hatun on with us because a lot of us think that she's the one who actually is causing even Muslim scholars to admit and acknowledge the differences in the various versions of the Qurans that exist around the world today. And we'll talk a little bit about this later, but Hatun did this basically by collecting Qurans from around the world and putting them in the faces of Muslims and saying, is this the same word as this? Oh, it's not? Then these are different Arabic Qurans, aren't they? And to this day, Hatun, to this day, whenever I play video clips of you showing these different versions of the Quran, like clockwork, almost 100% of Muslims that I show this to will say, no. Those are just different translations. There's only one Arabic Quran. When you show people those Qurans, are those different translations or are those different Arabic Qurans?
So they are different Arabic Qurans. Their name is different. Text is all Arabic inside, but in somehow, even though Muslims says it's Arabic, they want to express that it's the same. Or if they haven't seen any physical copy, they would say, oh, it's just a translation from one Arabic to another Arabic. Or the worst is, actually, I wrote them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I I hear that too. You printed all of the, how many you're up to now? Like it
37.
was 37 different Arabic Qurans. And yeah, I've heard that. If people finally acknowledge, okay, those are actually different Arabic words there, they'll say nope, she's a liar. She went and printed up all these different Qurans herself and is changing words. And by the way, it's a little side note. The people who tell me that, the people who say that, they reveal something about the way they think, right? They reveal to me that when someone is refuting you, that person must be using deception, in which case they're revealing to me something about how they think, right? They think, oh, the way to get what you want in life and the way to get your point across is to make things up. So if this Christian woman makes a point and refutes me, she must be lying because that's how you make points. And but ladies and gentlemen, that's not how we make points. We make points by presenting facts. Now you did get you have a request right here. Fred G. Sanford says, can you give a Hatun a shout out from Fred G. Sanford? The G is for gospel preacher. So there you go. You got
thank you.
I don't know if you guys know who Fred G. Sanford is over in in the UK, but from a show called Sanford and Son. Go ahead.
Yes, we know him. One of the things we have is, so you show them the different Qurans. First, they would kind of look at it, and then they know it is different. Now, they try to, first of all, justify it. Mm-hmm. And then when they kind of tell me, yeah, I wrote it, all I do, I simply start saying, yes, I did take time, and then I did write it. And then I wanted to support the economy, so I went to Saudi Arabia or Jordan or Nigeria, wherever I got the Quran, and then I asked them to publish it, and then I sold it so that everyone is happy. But no, actually, it was lovely Muslims who published it and who uses them.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, you're getting comments here. Yeshua Chai says Hatun invented the printing press. And so, yeah, yes. I really think they're going to have to ultimately accuse you of building a time machine and being a time-traveling Christian apologist and evangelist, and going back in time and using your fake Qurans that you printed up to trick a bunch of Muslims into thinking that there are all these different versions of the Quran, and to using different versions of the Quran in different places around the world. And so, by the way, that brings no. Sorry. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Of course, that brings lots of questions regarding the power of Allah, because Allah is going to protect that one and only Quran. If I'm able to produce 37 different Arabic Qurans and able to sell it, it tells me, yep, I think I'm a little bit more powerful than Allah, and clever maybe.
And very wealthy. Marion here says Hatun has all the money in the world, you know, no problem for her to print 37 Qurans and distribute them worldwide. Yeah. Actually, Marion, Hatun only had to make up 36 Qurans because there's the one perfect Quran, and then she made up an additional 36 different different Qurans. So yes, very, very wealthy, and Hatun must have her own printing press, and she's a time traveler. This is what people have to go through to explain this stuff. Oh, by the way, side note, I saw a comment before we went live from Truth and Courage, one of the Muslims who responds to us here, and check out this comment, everyone. I screenshotted it. Truth and Courage said, David Wood is liar. A liar, that is, who follows massive ad-Dajjal. Dajjal is sort of the Islamic Antichrist figure. He is no follower. The guy admitted long time. I saw a video where he went to Jerusalem and he says David Wood met the Dajjal. So Truth and Courage is telling people don't listen to me because I made a video when I went to Jerusalem and I said that I met the Dajjal. So notice, don't trust David, don't believe him. He admitted that he met the Dajjal. Now, if you actually go to the video that Truth and Courage is talking about, it's the one where I was on the Temple Mount, right? Where I went up to Al-Aqsa and the Dome of the Rock. And I was walking around there and I saw a one-eyed cat. There was a cat with one eye. And so I said, everyone, I have found the Dajjal here outside the Dome of the Rock. And that was it. And so now you have Truth and Courage running around. David Wood admits that he met the Dajjal. He admits it. My goodness, what an amazing religion this is, ladies and gentlemen, that these are the people who are here defending it. All right, everyone. Well, we're going live here at 4 o'clock Eastern time, mainly so that people who are in the UK and maybe Europe, maybe I understand it. The farther you go east in Europe, the later it is. But we're making this available, trying to get it a more friendly time for European viewers here with some of the live streams. Probably in upcoming live streams, because I have gotten requests to go even earlier. For people in other parts of Europe, so maybe like 2 o'clock or something. So probably here in the coming weeks, try to get some live streams in at 2 o'clock. But all right, so we have our topic. We're going to be looking, the topic I put on the screen is why are there so many different Qurans? And one of the amazing things is that even Shabir Ally is now admitting that there are different Qurans. And as I pointed out, I believe that is because Hatun has been going around putting them in people's faces and saying, look at these different Qurans. They are not the same in Arabic. And so you've got all these Muslims who've been taught all their lives by their leaders, by their apologists, that there is exactly one Quran and there has never been any other Quran. And it has been perfectly preserved right down to the letter. I have an endless supply of Muslim apologetics books by Muslims, right? By Muslim scholars put out to convince people that Islam is true. I have an endless supply of them that say the Quran has been perfectly preserved right down to the letter. There's never been a difference anywhere in the history of the manuscripts of the Quran. This is what Muslims are taught. And then you have someone like Hatun come along, put them up in their faces and say, these are different. And then the Muslims start wondering why. And they'll accuse her, oh, you must have printed those yourself. Why? Because my leaders told me something different, and my leaders would never lie. Yeah, they would. But they don't believe that, and so they keep going to their leaders. Why are there these different Qurans? Why are there these different Qurans? They're putting them on the screen. Why are there these different Qurans? And one approach is to just say everyone's lying, and the other approach is the one that we're going to see Shabir Ally take, and Shabir is going to acknowledge that there are different versions of the Quran depending on where you go in the world, and he's going to try and give us an explanation for why we have all of these differences. Now, Hatun, you've seen the video by Shabir. We're going to go through the entire video, except for like the end where he just, says, you can follow my ministry and stuff like that. But as far as the content goes, we're going to go through Shabir's entire video. Hatun, what do you think about Shabir's overall presentation here?
Actually, I feel sorry for him that he was put in that place to explain it. But I think it was 2016, Shabir Ally expressed that he follows the 1924 Quran. And in a sense, I am grateful that now Muslims are aware, actually, now there is the internet, there is a Sheikh Google, there is a Sheikh YouTube, and there are people asking questions. Therefore, Muslims are leaving Islam. We cannot lie to our Muslim brothers and sisters anymore. Let's simply make 15 minutes video to answer this once for all. So overall, he's gonna try to justify those different Qurans are simply complementary to one another.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, I'm sure in this live stream we'll be touching on some of the issues, but we'll certainly be having many future discussions on whether Shabir is accurately explaining why we have these different Qurans. The important point that we want to draw to here is he is acknowledging that there are different versions of the Quran with different words. And ladies and gentlemen, the main question I would have for Muslims is, why then do your leaders and your apologists tell you perfect preservation right down to the letter, when even your Muslim apologists are now coming out admitting, no, that's not true, that's actually false? Why did they spend years lying to you? Because that's all it is, it's a lie, right? If a Muslim wants to say, hey, we basically have what was revealed to Muhammad, I can see them saying that. But when they say perfect preservation right down to the letter, and they've read their sources, they're flat out lying. And that is the question. Why do Muslim leaders and Muslim apologists lie, just flat out, indisputably lie to people? Why do people like Jamal Badawi, who says that God protected the Quran perfectly, why do they lie? That's a big question for the Muslims who are watching. All right, should we go ahead and start checking out these video clips?
Yep.
All right, so ladies and gentlemen, we're going to again go through, now Shabir has posted actually a couple of videos on this. We're going to go through one during this live stream, and Shabir's actually going to give multiple explanations for why we have different versions of the Quran. But here we have just the sort of clip to start it off here. Let's see what he says.
Peace and the mercy and blessings of God be with you all. I'm your brother in faith, Shabir Ally. In this segment for Let the Quran Speak, I want to discuss with you the history of the rise and development of readings and manuscripts of the Quran.
So, Shabir says there, just at the little beginning clip, and I wanted that short clip just to make sure you can hear all of that, right? Right, Hatun?
Yeah.
Okay,
yes.
So you can hear everything Shabir is saying. All right, yeah. So he says he's going to talk about the history of the Quran. Now, to any Muslim who watches that video and hears Shabir say, right now I'm going to tell you about the history of the Quran, what are Muslims expecting to hear from Shabir? What are they expecting to hear?
Quran is well preserved, eternal word of Allah, not even dot changed.
Mm-hmm. And that, so the history of the Quran is pretty simple, according to what we hear from Muslims, right?
That is one Quran given to Muhammad, perfectly preserved today, dot by dot, letter by letter, sound by sound. It's exactly the same what we are reading.
And so it's a very, very simple history of the Quran. Muhammad revealed it to his followers. A ton of his followers, at least dozens, possibly more than 100, they all memorized it word for word from the mouth of Muhammad himself. And there's never been any differences. In fact, Hexitas here expanded upon what we were saying, because I said perfect preservation right down to the letter. Hexitas pointed out perfect preservation even right down to punctuation marks and diacritical marks that weren't even in the original Quran. And why that's really important is I have Muslim apologetics books and Muslim Dawah books that I have books that are meant to convince non-Muslims that Islam is true and that the Quran has been miraculously preserved. And they will say no difference even in the diacritical marks, even those little dots and stuff. No difference even in the diacritical marks. And why that's interesting is, as Hexitas points out, in the original there weren't diacritical marks. So what in the world are you talking about here? They're entire. It's like lie upon lie upon lie upon lie upon lie. So very interesting stuff. But yes, ladies and gentlemen, if the Muslim scholars and Muslim apologists are correct, this should be very simple from Shabir. Ladies and gentlemen, the Quran was revealed by the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam to his companions. They wrote it down, memorized it, so that you had two ways of confirming the Quran, and there's never been any difference ever, right down to our time. That's what we should be hearing. But guess what? Christians are saying other things. You'll hear Christians like Hatun and J. Smith, and they start talking about the 1924 Cairo edition and this sort of thing, and they start talking about the different versions in different parts of the world, and they start talking all this crazy stuff that shows that they're a bunch of liars. Shabir's going to set the record straight, ladies and gentlemen. All right, we ready to go?
Yep.
All right, let's see what Shabir has for us.
Today, most Muslims read the Quran in a text that is referred to as the Egyptian edition of 1924. That's how scholars refer to it. Most Muslims may not have realized that this is the designation for that manuscript, for that text. To Muslims in general, this is just simply the Quran. But this is not the only text of the Quran that is read throughout the world. In North Africa, there is a slightly different text that is based on a slightly different reading, mostly corresponding to what we read in the rest of the world, but with some slight variations that do not affect anything that Muslims believe and do not have any major impact on any Muslim practices. And then too, in some parts of Africa, there is another reading of the Quran and a matching manuscript that is prevalent. And here too, we find some slight variations that do not affect Muslim beliefs and do not affect Muslim practices in any significant degree.
Wow, wow, wow. So much packed into that. And Shabir's just getting started here, ladies and gentlemen. But notice, he starts off by saying most Muslims follow the 1924 edition of the Quran. Hatun, that's something I've heard for years. I've said that for years. J. Smith has been saying it for years. You've been saying it for years. I've heard Christians say it over and over and over and over and over again. When we say it, Muslims say, what are you talking about? We follow the original Quran as laid down by Prophet Muhammad. We don't, what are you talking about, 1924? The 1924 is the same as the Quran that was during the time of Prophet Muhammad. That's what we hear, and now you have Shabir Ally. Actually, what Muslims really follow is the 1924 Cairo edition of the Quran. This is amazing stuff. What do you think of Shabir here?
And then, of course, he explains that actually they are not even aware of that. They are following the 1924 Quran. I think it might be helpful for us to give a little bit help to Shabir Ally. So 1924 Quran, 10th of July 1924, it has been officialized in Cairo. And then later that year, with some additions, they made another Quran. And then in 1936, it has been officialized for Egypt. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, after we look at the Islamic history, and then we see all of those Qurans went under the river in Egypt. The ones like differ from one another. It is sad that seriously Muslims are trying to hide those basic informations from other Muslims, especially those who has platform. I think that's just simply deception. I grew up with knowing there is only one perfect Quran, and even at Speaker's Corner, where you get to meet Muslim missionaries, they still make the same claim. There is one perfect Quran, and the current Quran we are reading is taking us back to Muhammad. Yet now, Muslims don't have much options to tell us, yes, we've got the Quran from 1924. I am sure David Wood is much younger than that, but 1924 is like not that back. It's like 90 years.
Yeah. So now earlier you said you feel sorry for Shabir Ally. I'd like you to explain what you mean by that, because I feel sorry for him, but I feel sorry for him because he's going to catch a backlash from Muslims. He's going to catch a backlash from his. Is that what you meant?
Yeah. So there was a debate in England 2016, I think, or 2015, between Shabir Ally and Jonathan McLatchy, and there was a question on the Quran has been asked. In that question, in that time, Shabir Ally said he follows 1924 Quran. And then suddenly Muslims in the room start showing him a note to just simply telling him, unpack what you meant, because that was a very big deal. Since then, he's not that much favorite anymore.
Yeah.
But now, I don't know, but probably he's already getting messages from Muslims that why this information is public. One of the different things between Muslims and Christians is, if I make a mistake, and I do lots of mistakes, by the time from Speaker's Corner to home, I even get phone calls on the train because I said something at Speaker's Corner that was theologically wrong, or I misrepresented. That video already went up on YouTube. Christians would call me and then tell me that I made a mistake, and they would explain it to me. And following week, I have to turn up there, and then I would say, I'm sorry, I stand corrected. But one of the things with Islam and with Muslims is you don't express those things publicly. So for 1400 years, if you just get rid of first couple of centuries, because Muslims were quite okay to have different Qurans, but last 1,000 years, Muslims are saying to one another, there is only one perfect Quran. In the mosques, today they are still teaching and preaching there is one perfect Quran. Yet a Muslim who has got platform stood up a couple of weeks ago and then said, actually, you are not aware of it, but the Quran, you are kind of saying the Quran of Muhammad is only dated in 1924. That is sad, because now Muslims are kind of gonna not like him.
Yeah, and that's so, ladies and gentlemen, that's what we mean when we say we feel bad for him. And notice why Shabir has been put into this position. He's been put into this position because Muslim scholars and Muslim apologists have been lying to Muslims for centuries, telling them perfect preservation right down to the letter. And now, notice, it's Christians who are the ones going through the Muslim sources, going through the Muslim manuscripts, getting different versions of the Quran from around the world to show Muslims that they've been lied to, till we get to the point where even a Muslim apologist like Shabir Ally has to admit, no, we actually have different versions of the Quran in different parts of the world, and the Quran that Muslims follow today is the 1924 Cairo edition. Shabir has to admit this. Why does he have to admit that? Because it's true, right? And so Christians are the ones that have to tell Muslims the truth. And now Shabir is actually telling the truth about acknowledging some important facts about the Quran. And the response from Muslims is going to be, how dare you, Shabir? We condemn you, Shabir. How dare you say that there are these, how dare you speak the truth, Shabir? It's like the community prefers a comforting lie than a discomforting truth, right? They would prefer, hey, lie to me if it makes me feel good about my religion. And if you tell me the truth about my religion and it's something I don't like, then I don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear the truth. And notice this goes back to the very companions of Muhammad when they're sitting there burning manuscripts to cover up the differences, to pretend that, hey, we have this, we're going to put out this single authoritative Quran. They would rather have just complete unity and have everyone think that they're on the same page with this Quran. And if they have to burn all of the evidence, they don't care. It's better. It's a comforting lie is better. This goes back to the earliest stages of Islam, and no surprise it comes down to the present. And when someone differs, when someone says, no, we actually need to acknowledge the truth here, otherwise everyone's just going to expose us as liars. We have to acknowledge the truth here, and he's the one who's going to get in trouble. So notice, the Muslims in the chat and Muslims around the world, they're going to be mad at Shabir Ally for admitting basic, indisputable facts about the history of the Quran. They're going to be mad at us for using clips of Shabir Ally to expose the lie that's been going on. They're going to get mad at us. They're going to get mad at Shabir. Who are they not going to get mad at? Muslims aren't going to get mad at the people who've been lying to them for years. Those are the people they're not going to get mad at. Whereas in Christianity, it would be the exact opposite. If our leaders and our apologists spent years lying and then someone exposed it, we would get mad at the liars. In Islam, they don't get mad at the liars. They love the liars. They hate the people who come along and refute the lies. Why is it? Why would the true religion need this, ladies and gentlemen? Why is the true religion built upon this foundation of lies? Okay, Hatun, the other important thing that Shabir acknowledged there in that opening, so he acknowledged that Muslims follow the 1924 edition of the Quran. And then he pointed out that he made it sound like there are two additional versions of the Quran. One, it sounded like he was from Northern Africa, and one from
Africa.
Somewhere mid-Africa or something like that. He's acknowledging that there are these two alternatives, and there are differences. There are different versions. They're different Arabic, but they're basically the same thing. You don't get a different version of Islam from them. Now, is that the complete story, or are there even more than those two extras?
That's little bit of introduction of the story. But I just want to kind of share something. I know this is not linked with the topic, but hopefully it will help audience to kind of see how serious it is. On Sunday the 17th of May, I had a Skype meeting with someone from Saudi Arabia, a Muslim who has been there for all of his life. He went to Kaaba. He spent lots of time around it. He even drank Zamzam water. And a couple of years ago, he comes across with some of YouTube videos, and then he starts following things up. And on the 17th, when we talk, he was simply screaming at me why Christians are telling him that Islam is false. So for a couple of years, he's been checking the informations Christians are putting there, and he's got access to the informations. He checked it out. He's convinced that the information is given by Christians to Muslims are correct. Now he's upset and he's screaming, why are you telling me this? Instead of like calling his imam or his sheikh and then saying, why have you lied to me? He's screaming at Christians, why are you giving me this truth information? That kind of in a sense shows us, they've been lied, and when someone figures out they've been lied, then it is very hard for them. It is very hard for them to move one step forward and then say, yeah, there is something wrong, and then I need to act for it. Or you can pick the other option and then say living under the lie is very easy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so
it's a choice up there.
Yeah, so notice everyone, it's Christians telling the truth, and a Muslim in Saudi Arabia getting mad. Why are you telling me this? You know you're hurting my feelings by telling me the truth. I would feel much better if you kept all these facts and true statements and refutations away from me. I just want to hear the truth from I just want to hear lies from my Muslim leaders because it feels good. What a religion. What a religion that relies on this. All right.
Anyway, on Shabir Ally. Yes, Shabir Ally expresses there are two different Qurans out there alongside of 1924 Quran. One of them, he says, from North Africa, that is identified as the Warsh Quran. And Warsh is someone who preached in Muhammad's mosque in Medina for 4 years, approximately 100 years after Muhammad. That's the kind of Quran attributes to him. And then other Quran, he doesn't give us the name. He says it's in Africa. I think he's talking about the Duri Quran. But that's only 2 out of 37 which I have. Or according to the Islamic tradition, that would be 2 out of 30 different Arabic Qurans. And then he also expressed, oh, there are small differences, slightly differences, variations between them. Nothing impacts in their faith. I would simply say that's not true, because when we look at the Warsh, so the current Quran Muslims are reading 1924, so-called 1924 Quran is identified as the Hafs Quran from Kufa. The Quran which people use in North Africa, that will be in Morocco, that is Warsh Quran. Today's copies between Hafs Quran and Warsh Quran, there are over 1,300 differences, textual variations within them.
No, there aren't. There are 0.
Yes, they were 0. They were 0 until Shabir Ally put this video up. Since then, we've got over 1,300 textual variations between them. And yes, none of them gives different God. Yes, none of them gives them different Muhammad. But those variations affect the life of Muslim when it comes to their practical life, such as, first of all, like, I think for me, it doesn't even need to go to there, because dot by dot, letter by letter, sound by sound, word by word, it's supposed to be the same. But what we have is here, when you compare those Qurans, you kind of have to sit back and then say, actually, I don't know when and how I need to do wudu if I follow the Quran in Morocco or if I follow the Quran in England. That's the issue. And like currently I've got 37 different Arabic Qurans. I haven't went through them all, but so far I've got over 90,000 textual variations between them. And that is sad reality.
90,000 textual variations in a book in which there are 0. That's the that's the real miracle of the preservation of the Quran. I made it. In fact, I made an article on that. Was probably over 10 years ago, and I wrote the article. It was titled something along the miracle of the preservation of the Quran. And the miracle, I said, is that the Quran has all of the features of a book that's been changed over and over and over again, and yet it's somehow never been changed. That's the miracle, right? It has all the features, all the characteristics of a book that was just passed on by human beings, in which case human beings make mistakes, human beings make changes, and it has all the characteristics of a book that was passed on by humans and that was changed over and over and over again. And yet it's somehow been perfectly preserved, even though it has all the features of a book that's been changed. And so that's the real miracle of the Quran there. And so you're saying that you've acquired tens of thousands of Quran variants in your 37 different Arabic versions of the Quran. And ladies and gentlemen, that right there is why Muslims like Shabir Ally are being forced to acknowledge it. And so notice, going back to why, Shabir Ally is going to get in trouble over this. Shabir's going to get in trouble over this, but from Muslims, not from us. We think it's a mark of integrity to actually acknowledge certain facts. But Shabir's going to get in trouble for this, for acknowledging this, when I think Shabir's thinking long term, like how long can we just keep denying this? How long, when Christians like Hatun are coming up and putting the Qurans in our faces, how long can we keep saying, nope, perfect preservation right down to the letter? And Shabir is acknowledging this. I think Yasser Qadi is realizing this, and they're realizing we can't just keep saying perfect preservation right down to the letter. It's not going to work. But again, Muslims, I don't know why. I don't know why this won't affect your confidence in your leaders and apologists in any way, right? It's like, because I see this in these live streams, right? You'll hear something from your Muslim apologist. You'll come here, use it in the chat. It'll be completely refuted and destroyed. We'll expose your leader or your apologist as a complete liar. And then you'll come back the next day with your next claim from your Muslim apologist, the next thing you heard from your Muslim apologist, right? And we'll expose that as a lie. We could do this 487 times, showing that your leaders are just flat out lying to you, and you'll just keep mindlessly believing anything they say. And so notice here, again, you can go to almost any Muslim apologetics book, any Dawah book, it'll say perfect preservation right down to the letter. When you open up that book and you read that, and then you hear even Shabir Ally now admitting, nope, there are different versions of the Quran, definitely has not been perfectly preserved. How do you not say, well, I don't trust those guys anymore? If they were telling me lies about that, why am I going to trust them about other things? How does that not enter your mind? That would be the first thing that, if I were a Muslim, that would be the first thing that entered my head. If they were lying to me about that, everything they're saying is under investigation as far as I'm concerned right now.
Another thing is, one of the other thing has been recently done is, I don't know if you are able to see the book I am holding. So this is the new book came out, identified as the British translation of the 10th Qiraat of the Noble Quran. So this book simply tells you, yes, there are differences in the different Arabic Qurans, and then author says actually those differences are changing meaning of the word and the sentence. And then he puts together the English translation for everyone to see. Yep, there are differences. And it is put together by Muslim.
All right, so from that first clip of Shabir, apart from his little intro, from the first actual content clip, he's already acknowledged that Muslims are following a particular Quran, the 1924 Cairo edition, so less than 100 years ago. And he acknowledges that there are two different versions of the Quran that are different from that version, the 1924 Cairo edition, and they're in Africa. So Shabir has acknowledged both of these. Quick comment here. I'm assuming this is a joke. The name is Three Idiots here. But he says, Quran is the only religious book in which God himself took responsibility of preservation. Bible never make such a claim. Isn't that enough to reject Bible? There are so many problems here. That's why I'm assuming this is a joke. If you're saying the Quran takes responsibility for perfect preservation, well, then the Quran is false, because we've seen that the Quran hasn't been perfectly preserved. Second, if you're saying the Bible never makes such a claim, what, that God is protecting the scriptures? Of course it does. And finally, that if you're the problem here would be the Quran, which you say has been perfectly preserved, says that God says that God has protected all of his scriptures, says that no one can change his words, says that he revealed the Torah and the gospel, that no one can change his words, and that the Torah and the gospel are still authoritative. So if we were to reject the Bible, we would have to reject the Quran as well. So again, I'm assuming that Three Idiots is joking here. All right. So should we go on to the next clip from Shabir?
Yeah.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, Shabir Ally giving Muslims more history of the Quran that they never hear from Muslims, but have been hearing from Christians for years. And now Shabir is acknowledging what we say.
So how do we make sense of all of this? We want to retrace the history of how these manuscripts became divergent. How is it that we have a variety of readings of the Quran and manuscripts to match, or rather even now printed texts to match? Now today in a Muslim college in which imams are being trained to serve the community, an imam, if he specializes in the recitations of the Quran, he may be taught as many as 10 different recitations of the Quran. And these 10 recitations complement each other. They basically, again, have no effect on the beliefs of Muslims, and they do not affect in any significant degree the practices of Muslims. So we want to get a grip of this. How did all of this come to pass?
So now Shabir is acknowledging that Muslims who go to Islamic schools to learn the recitation of the Quran may learn as many as 10 different recitations of the Quran. We'll learn as many as 10 different recitations of the Quran, but he's saying you don't get a different Islamic belief. And notice he says it doesn't affect practice in any significant way. So he's acknowledging that it might affect practices in certain ways, just not any really major way. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, this flies in the face of everything Muslims are taught all their lives. They're taught all their lives perfect preservation right down to the letter. Notice we barely started the video, and Shabir has already acknowledged no, Muslims follow the 1924 Cairo edition. There are multiple other editions. Muslims who go off to Islamic seminary may learn as many as 10 different recitations of the Quran. But at the end of the day, those differences in these different recitations and different versions, they're not things that would affect core, essential Islamic doctrine or practice. And the reason that stands out, ladies and gentlemen, is that is exactly what Christians have been saying forever. When Muslims say, "What about all these textual variants in the history of your Bible?" Well, guess what? Anytime you have human beings copying down giant books, you're going to end up with tons of textual variants. You never end up with textual variants that affect core Christian doctrine or practice. And Muslims say, doesn't matter. That's not what we're talking about. If one letter's been changed, your book's completely corrupted, can't be trusted, it hasn't been preserved by God. And now you've got Muslims, yep, there are all these variants in the Qurans, there are different versions of the Qurans. And by the way, Shabir's just getting started. He's going to say so much interesting stuff here. But his takeaway is, but it's not really important because it doesn't affect core Islamic doctrine or practice. So notice what Shabir's saying. If these differences don't affect, core practice or belief, then it's not really a significant issue. Well, great. Then there went all of your objections to the history of the Bible, ladies and gentlemen. There went all of them. They all just went bye-bye by that admission. What Muslims, notice what Muslims do. What your average Muslim does is, he says, Quran's been perfectly preserved right down to the letter, and if there's any variant anywhere in the history of the manuscript tradition of the Bible's been corrupted, can't trust it, your book is garbage. And Shabir's coming along, nope, there are all kinds of differences, there are different versions of the Quran, and they're okay because as long as they don't affect core doctrine or practice, that's not really corruption. So now it's not corruption, ladies and gentlemen. This is amazing stuff. Hatun, what do you think?
I think before even we look deeper, there is something essential which people are, I think, intentionally forgetting. According to Islamic tradition is, only the right recitation of the Quran is going to intercede for you on the day of judgment. If you've got already teaching your imams at the schools or colleges 10 different recitations, yet rest of the Muslim world doesn't know, they're just reciting the Hafs version, which is the correct recitation, who is going to intercede for you on the day of judgment? There is a big theological problem, first of all, there. All you can do is pray and pray and pray that Hafs is the right recitation, which is going to intercede for Muslims on the day of judgment. If it is not, Muslims are already messed up. That's the first point. Second point is, I think Muslims are simply saying, oh, it's just a recitation. When they say it's recitation, all they are trying to do is, it's how you pronounce the word, but that's not the case. What Islamic tradition is talking about, those Qurans have different names, and those words are written differently. Their meaning is differently. Therefore, you pronounce them and you recite them differently. And why do you have that issue at the first place?
Yeah.
People grow up all knowing there is perfect Quran, there is one perfect Quran. And now, people are at colleges learning there are 10 different recitations. That's just deceiving intentionally, and it is just wrong and wrong and wrong. And Shabir Ally talks about they complement one another. I think Shabir Ally thinks like it's the husband and wife, how they complement and make kind of complement one another. But in here, no, they don't complement one another, because there is one eternal tablet.
Mm-hmm.
How can suddenly we've got 30 different Arabic Qurans? And when he says 10 recitations, actually he's not talking about 10. When you break it down, he's talking about 30, because those 10s are the imams, but people are reciting the students, what the students are said, and those students have different Qurans. In that sense, it is a bit disappointed, but it is good start. So when Sheikh Google takes over or Sheikh YouTube takes over, probably we will get to hear with all of them, with all of their meaning.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And so, yeah, it's imagine it's you've got Allah claiming that he has this most clear book ever. Throughout the Quran, Allah says over and over and over again, like a beating drum, that his revelations are clear. And yet, according to Muslims, he must have revealed it in all these different ways to try and convey what in the world he means. And even then, they still can't figure it out. And so, we've said it before, we've said it again. If we take Muslims seriously in their claims about their God and their book, Allah is the absolute worst communicator in all of history. Just imagine someone who needed, in order to communicate basic commands, had to say, "Hey, let me give you this verse in 7 different versions, and hope that you can figure it out." Then, very interesting stuff. But we're going to get to some explanations of Shabir Ally on why we have these kinds of things. All right, should we go on?
Yep.
Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Shabir Ally.
Muslim scholars have made sense of this by referring to a tradition according to which the Prophet Muhammad, on whom be peace, said that the Quran has been revealed in 7 ahruf. And I have to come back and explain that term, ahruf. In any case, that tradition says you can recite of any of these, whichever is easy for you. And moreover, that each one of them by itself is complete, and each one serves as a healing. Now, to use comparable language from our Christian friends, we see that sometimes there is the statement, that which is sufficient for your salvation. So it looks like what this tradition is saying is that if you read according to any one of the readings, then this is sufficient for your salvation. And with this in mind, it gives great comfort to the average Muslim, knowing that you can read just one of these readings in one text, like, for example, the 1924 Cairo edition of the Quran, and that is sufficient for you as a book of guidance. It is sufficient for you to have salvation, because, again, the various readings do not change anything that Muslims believe, and do not affect the practices of Muslims in any significant degree.
So, what do you think of that, Hatun? I'm going to pull up a comment here, but go ahead.
One of the things I learned is people believe if you say same thing, and even if that's not true, again and again and again, everyone will believe that, and people will remember that. So Shabir Ally is saying, yeah, none of it's going to affect your eternity. It is sufficient for your salvation. It's all good. And he's expecting everyone to remember that. Therefore, just be confident in the Quran, which one you are reciting. But my basic questions would be, if have you noticed Muslim scholars are thinking that it's not Muhammad, it's not how Allah said, it is the Muslim scholars are trying to argue and trying to figure out how we can justify, now we end up having different Qurans. Mm-hmm. One of the way we can do as a Muslim scholar, we are going to say, yeah, we go back to tradition, and then we say, why Allah, in the first place, a man who cannot read and write? Arabs were not good enough to kind of recite one version, therefore Allah felt sorry for Arabs. and then Allah give them one verse in 7 different ways to Arabs, so Arabs can remember that. That's just all like big mess and confusion. And also Muslim scholars simply says actually Aruf has nothing to do how Quran is given in 7 different ways. That will be it. I think follow up the video he will be expressed that this is all Aruf given in one.
Yeah, I think he goes on to say we scholars don't even know what the ahruf are, which is amazing because Allah reveals the Quran in these different ahruf, and you can ask 10 different Muslim scholars what the ahruf are, and you get 10 different answers. They don't even know. They don't even know what these things are. So this is interesting stuff. Check out this comment here because this is very typical. Forza here says not differences in the content, differences in pronunciations, but the meaning of the word don't change. It's just like the difference in the pronunciation of Irish English versus USA English. So the difference between these different versions of the Quran and these different recitations of the Quran is like the difference between an Irish person speaking English and an American speaking English. The Irish person would say, "Me frosted Lucky Charms, they're magically delicious." Whereas an American would say, "My frosted Lucky Charms are magically delicious." And you see, those are the only differences we're talking about here. Hatun, is Forza correct here?
No.
No? So it's more than mere pronunciation.
So it is written differently. Therefore, it is pronounced differently, and therefore the meaning is different. Okay? There is a difference saying a book versus books. When I say a book, I'm talking about only one book. If I am saying books, I'm talking more than one book, minimum 2. There is a difference saying you, and there is different meaning and saying they are 2 different things. Or fight and kill, they are 2 different things. They are written differently, they are pronounced differently, and meaning is differently. One of the things you can do is, I forgot the name of the person who is making the comment. If you just simply get this book.
Oh yeah, we did have a request. Could you hold that up a little more and give the title of the book, because someone clearly wants the book. So it's Bridges' translation of the 10 Qirat of the Noble Quran.
Yes,
okay.
And it is from Fadl Suleiman. This book just tells you it is not the how you pronounce it. It says meanings are different, and author makes it easy. Meaning is different in Arabic as well as different in English. Okay?
Yep.
And in English, fight and kill is different. In Arabic, fight and kill is different. In English, book and books are different. In Arabic, that's different as well. Or other very basic question is, Muhammad gets so upset and cries that Arabs are poor Arabs, they can't even read, they can't even get on with the language. Why would Allah send to one tribe different versions of one language?
Yeah, so that doesn't make any sense. If they're, first of all, we have to clarify. It can't possibly just refer to, different pronunciations, because during the time of Muhammad, even people from the same tribe would disagree in their recitation of the Quran. So they're from the same tribe, they spoke the same dialect, and they're using different versions of the Quran. So this isn't simply different pronunciation. But I'd like to point out, Forza, if we actually go through, when we're talking about, you basically got different things. One, you have manuscripts today, and you can line up the manuscripts side by side. So if you line up the Hafs and Warsh and so on, you see differences. They're not simply different pronunciation, there are different words there, right? But if you go back to Muhammad's early reciters of the Quran, people like Ibn Masud and Ubay ibn Ka'b and so on, you find things like this. So if you read Surah 33, verse 6 of the Quran, It says, in the version you have today, the prophet is closer to the believers than their own selves, and his wives are their mothers. So that's what it says. The prophet is closer to the believers than their own selves, and his wives are their mothers. Right? Let me read to you a comment from Yusuf Ali's translation of the Quran when he adds a comment at the bottom. Here's his comment. In some qiras, like that of Ubay ibn Ka'b, occur also the words, and he is a father of them, which imply his spiritual relationship and connection with the words, and his wives are their mothers. So notice, if you read the Quran today, it says, prophet is closer to the believers than their own selves, and his wives are their mothers. But if you went to Ubay ibn Ka'b's version of the Quran, it says, and he is a father of them, meaning Muhammad is your father. Your sort of spiritual father, in a spiritual sense. The words, he is a father of them, are not in your Quran. They were in Ubay ibn Ka'b's edition and a couple other editions, a couple other versions of the Quran. So, I feel, I'm shocked that we even have to say this. Is a verse of the Quran that says, and he is a father of them, and a verse of the Quran that doesn't have that, it doesn't say he is a father of them at all, is that a different pronunciation? Is that a different pronunciation? One has the words, and he is a father of them. The other doesn't have the words, and he is a father of them. One has this phrase, one doesn't have the phrase. Is that a different pronunciation? In other words, if you go to Ireland and they say, and he is a father of them, and you come to America and we pronounce it differently by not saying anything, are those the same things? Are those different pronunciations? Or are those different words? Forza. I'm saying Forza. Notice, it's so frustrating. Forza, why are you saying it's different pronunciations? Why? Because here's how it works. Your leaders tell you, perfect preservation, right down to the letter. And you run out and go, the Quran has been perfectly preserved, right down to the letter. And then you ran into someone like Hatun who said, actually, no, here are all these different versions of the Quran. So you ran back to your Muslim leaders and said, oh my goodness, she's showing me that there are different versions of the Quran. And the same people who lied to you at the beginning lied to you again and said, no, those are just different pronunciations. There's no difference in the words. There's no difference in the meanings. So now you're running out going, you see, my leaders, the same ones who lied to me the first time, they told me this. It's false. It's false. As this live stream continues, I'll give you example after example after example after example after example of changes to the Quran from your own Muslim sources. What does it take? What does it take for you to realize that your leaders are lying to you? Because apparently they could tell you absolutely anything and you'll just believe them, no matter what. This is amazing. And now you've got Shabir Ally even admitting that there are these differences. And he's not talking about pronunciations. Forza, go ahead and ask Shabir Ally, are you just talking about differences in pronunciations? That's not what he's talking about. That is most certainly not what he's talking about here. So try to break out of this box that your leaders have put you in. Try to break free of these mental chains that keep you from ever thinking rationally about these topics. All right, Hatun, anything else before we go on?
I don't know if it's possible, but I'm gonna kind of share a screen with you. I don't know if you are able to. Are you able to see my screen? So I've got like a book on my screen.
No, yeah. Let's see. Yes, I can put that. I can put that up. All right.
So this is the picture from the book, which I just show it to people.
Okay.
Just to make a point, actually, it's not the pronunciation. It's not like Irish people pronounce things different from the American people. Mm-hmm. So Muslim author is telling me, this is like page 4 of the book. He just like started the Quran, okay, just page 4. Chapter 2, verse, oh, it's too small for me to see, verse 35. He says, because Arabic is different, Arabic is pronounced differently. Arabic has been pronounced differently. Therefore, this word where it says, yet Satan made them sleep, okay, that's Arabic word. This is the English translation, if you think this is the Irish English, okay. When you come to the US English, it says, yet Satan removed them. So your Muslim scholar thinks actually that it does change the meaning. It is not just Irish pronunciation versus US pronunciation. It does change the meaning. Therefore, I need to express that. And then he tells me, which Quran is that so? It's not even Hafs Quran or Warsh Quran. It is in Hamza's Quran. And you haven't heard that because your Muslim scholars did have not chance to explain you to that. So in Irish, while you say, Satan made them sleep, you move to the US and then you say, Satan removed them. And when you look at the context, actually there is a theological issue there. But that is just the pronunciation from Ireland to US. Change the meaning of all. If you are able to not share my screen now, I'm gonna kind of get rid of that, so I don't want all of my files to be on YouTube.
You're good.
Okay.
It's back to us.
Okay.
All right. So notice, ladies and gentlemen, Muslims keep coming with what their leaders tell them, and over and over again, what their leaders tell them are lies. People like Shabir Ally are acknowledging. They're not coming out saying, "Oh, you've been lied to for years." But if you actually put together what he's saying with what you've been told, it's clear that you've been lied to for years. And how do the Muslims respond? By telling us what their leaders said again. Wow.
Or you get the Muslims who looks at those differences, they see it, and they want to do nothing with Islam, as well as they don't want to follow their imams and their scholars anymore because they have been lied. By their imams, by their scholars, by their mother and their father, and now they've got nothing to do with Islam. They don't want to do anything with Islam. Therefore, what we see is, Shabir Ally sees there is a need to just make a video to explain what's happening behind the doors.
All right, should we go on to Shabir again?
Yep.
He's going to keep giving us some awesome content here. Thank you, Dr. Ali. Here we go.
So it's not like one of these readings is going to tell you that there is only one God, and another reading is going to say, hey, wait a minute, there is another God along with God. No, the central beliefs of Muslims are all unaffected by these variety of readings. But now, the tradition says that the Quran has been revealed in the 7 modes. Now, I said ahruf previously, that's an Arabic word, and the singular is harf, which means letter. So it literally means 7 letters. But this word could also mean edge. The word harf could mean edge. So maybe it means 7 limits. And in fact, Muslim scholars have not been able to define this term with any unanimity. And a wide variety of opinions have been given as to what this term means. What does it mean to say that the Quran has been revealed according to 7 edges or 7 letters? It may mean, according to some scholars, that the Quran has been revealed according to 7 dialects of the Arabic language. So whereas there was today one standard Arabic language, which is called Modern Standard Arabic, the language that is the language of textbooks and newspapers and magazines and news broadcasts and so on, that being an official language, there will be a wide variety of spoken languages in the Arab world. To the extent that sometimes the people of one region cannot understand the people of another region, though each one understands themselves to be speaking the Arabic language. Something like this may have prevailed even within the lifetime of the Prophet Muhammad, on whom be peace. So there were regional dialects of the Arabic language, and it looks like the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, may have permitted his companions in the initial phase to recite the Quran in terms of its meaning, to express that meaning in their familiar terms and their modes of expression according to their dialects.
Is everyone hearing what he just said? So Muhammad may have permitted the people from these different areas who spoke different dialects of Arabic, who couldn't understand what each other were saying, and he may have permitted them to recite a Quran in their familiar Arabic dialect and their own expressions and so on. By the way, again, he's just getting started here. He's going to keep giving more explanations of why there are all these different versions of the Quran. But yeah, so just starting there, notice he also said, you know, the word harf, it can mean letter, or it can mean edge. Muslim scholars don't agree on what these huruf are. One suggestion is that it's dialects. Again, that doesn't make sense, ladies and gentlemen, because even people from the same tribe who indisputably spoke the same dialect were reciting different versions of the Quran. So this, I would say, it can't refer to dialect. It has to refer to something else. But notice what Shabir is saying here, right? You've got all these different versions of the Quran. Muhammad explains it by saying, oh, but you know, the Quran is revealed in these 7 ahruf. And you ask Muslim scholars, well, what in the world does that mean? We don't know. We have no idea what it means. But it's been perfectly preserved somehow. Yep. And believe us, believe whatever we say. Any thoughts on this, Hatun?
Whatever it meant, it is sad that like Muslims don't even know what it meant or what it means today. But clearly that's not the correct, because that's the case Muslim scholars are making. But whatever it meant, it caused Ubay bin Ka'b, whom Muslim needs to take the Quran from, whom Muslim needed to learn from, doubt in his faith, because there is a story where Ubay bin Ka'b hears different version of the Quran. They go to Muhammad, and then Muhammad simply struck Ubay bin Ka'b from his chest, and Ubay bin Ka'b says, I didn't have that much doubt even in the time of Jahiliyyah, because now Muhammad is telling me, oh, Quran is revealed in 7 different ahruf. And then you've got similar story with Umar, father-in-law of Muhammad, and Hisham, who are from the same tribe. They are reciting the Quran differently, where Umar wants to grab him joining his prayer. But good guy, he's like patient, he waits until the prayer finish. Both of them go to Muhammad, and then by that time Muhammad never told anyone, oh, by the way, Allah is giving me the Quran in 7 different ways. That's the first time Muhammad just explained the whole world. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there is Quran in 7 different ways. And he simply kind of says, yeah, Allah wanted to make it easier for you. Mm-hmm. Yet, today Muslims are saying, oh, maybe Muhammad might do that. Muhammad might imply that, or it might be dialect. I think it all questions what kind of God you worship and what kind of prophet you follow.
Yeah, and notice the reason, I mean, so Muslims are taught perfect preservation right down to the letter. Allah could have done that, but instead, according to Shabir and other Muslims, he revealed it in all these different ways, which are leading to all these different versions that we have today, which are leading to not perfect preservation, or what in the world do you mean by perfect preservation of one Quran? Well, there are all these differences, right? It's just one Quran, just one Quran. We all memorize the same Quran. Even in the time of Muhammad, they didn't memorize one Quran. And DJM here points out in the chat, he says, was the Quran revealed to the Prophet Muhammad 7 times, each time in a different dialect, right? And notice that's the problem, ladies and gentlemen. If Muslims in different areas who speak different dialects are reciting the Quran in different ways according to their own dialects, and again, it's not just pronunciation. It's not just pronunciation here. They're reciting different versions of the Quran. Does that mean that when Muhammad received, let's say he was receiving some verses from Surah 2, does that mean he receives them and he goes, okay, here, I've received a revelation, here it is in our dialect. Okay, now I'm going to recite it again in a different way, and that's for this other group over here. All right, now I'm receiving it in the 3rd way, and that's going to be for those people over there. And now I'm receiving in the 4th way, and make sure you pass this on to those. And now, okay, there you go, all 7 ways. Now there are all 7 ways of that revelation. Now I'm receiving the next revelation in 7 different ways. This is meant to help people understand the Quran. This is meant so that people can understand the Quran in their dialect. Is that the theory, Muslims? Is that your theory there? Because that's interesting.
That's supposed to be only for Medina verses, by the way.
Oh, good.
Not like all of the Mecca verses. And if you think practically, like background of this thing, it talks about Muhammad was begging Gabriel, oh, my people are old people. I've got like old people, young people, old woman, young woman. and they are not able to learn it in one way. Do you mind? Please be extra kind and then give us different versions. And then they do bargains, and then Angel brings it in 7 different ways. Mm-hmm. But as that happens, you kind of would say, okay, if people are already not able to learn things simple, if people are old and you've got lots of issues, you want to keep everything simple. Mm-hmm. 1 + 1 makes 2. You keep everything simple. You teach people in one way. Even when you are teaching something in the class, you don't say, okay, guys, this is the how we add the numbers way 1, way 7, or way 7 is for people in the future who is gonna come and then put that together. But whatever happens, let's say, okay, Mohammed and Gabriel was very good. They did the bargain, and then Quran came in 7 different ways. Uthman steps in 650s and then says, no, we are gonna put that in dialect of Qurayshi, if it is the dialect. And then Uthman makes it 1. Then how come we today end up with you are teaching Muslims 10 different ways in the Muslim schools, Muslim colleges? That's already another question.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, so now Muslims are memorizing 10 different recitations of the Quran because these early dialects complement each other in their pronunciation. So it's just like again, it's just like reciting it in English and with an Irish accent as well. So yeah. So according to what the Muslims have been claiming now, what Shabir is really saying is that Muslims go to their Islamic seminary and they memorize the Quran in 10 different recitations. And it's just like 10 different accents, right? So one will recite it with an American accent, and the next will recite it with English, but with an Australian accent. And the next one will recite it with a British accent. The next with an Irish accent, and so on, and down the line. And they have to memorize all these different accents. Guys, do you even hear your defenses of the Quran? Do you know how this sounds to anyone who isn't mindlessly stuck with this perfect preservation theory? It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. It's always been ridiculous. You just don't realize it. All right. Should we check out another clip?
Yep.
All right. Back to our good friend, Shabir Ally.
So we must now think back to that time and how it is different from our present time. In our present time, we have the Quran coming at the end of a long period of historical progression, leading to our present time. And in our present time, we have people who are specialized in the Quran. They devote their lives to studying the Quran. So they have every tool and apparatus at their disposal to make sure that they're reciting the Quran in a very precise way. And we want to insist on the precise recitation, because if everybody goes changing the Quran this way and that way, eventually it can go way out of whack, and one would lose the essential message. However, this situation that we encounter now is different from the situation in the lifetime of the Prophet Muhammad, on whom be peace. In our present situation, we lay a great emphasis on preserving the Quran letter for letter, word for word, because we want to make sure that nobody's going to change it. In the time of the Prophet Muhammad, on whom be peace, the most important impetus was to ensure that the message of the Quran would be absorbed and put into practice and taught to others. So the precise words, which are the vehicles through which the important teachings are being disseminated, were not so important. The teachings were important, but the precise words to preserve them were not of paramount importance. They did not trump in importance the need for the message of the Quran to be absorbed, to be practiced, and to be taught by others.
Wow, wow, wow. Wow. Wow, 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 wow. So now we're moving into Shabir's second explanation. So the first explanation for why you have these different versions of the Quran is that you had different ahruf, which we don't know what that means, but maybe it means dialects, but we can't say. The word means edges or letters. The Quran is revealed in 7 letters or 7 edges, and we don't know what it means. One theory is that it refers to dialects when it can't actually mean dialects because people who spoke the same dialect had differences as well. So that's one part, but that's one part of it. That's one part of why there are different versions of the Quran. The second explanation from Shabir here is that while Muslims today are obsessed with the precise wording of the Quran, during the time of Muhammad, they didn't care so much. Their main focus was to get you to understand the message and the command that's being given to you. So, you have to pray, or you have to do this, or you have to do that. The main thrust was getting the gist across, right? Just get the gist. Just get the idea here. You don't need to learn precise wording. Who cares about that? Who cares about the precise wording of the Quran? So notice if you're understanding what Shabir is doing here, he's basically saying that Muhammad would reveal it to his companions. Muhammad would reveal a verse to his companions. His companions would then go tell people, tell other Muslims who aren't right there what Muhammad said, and they're not saying exactly what he said. They're just giving the kind of meaning. Oh yeah, he said we need to pray, right? But these other Muslims would memorize it in the way that was told to them, not the precise way that Muhammad revealed it. And so what they ended up with was those Muslims who heard, who heard the Quran from so-and-so, who heard it from so-and-so, who heard it from so-and-so, they're not reciting it the way Muhammad revealed to it. They're reciting it in a different way. And what happened after that was, well, they memorized it in this way. They memorized the Quran in a way that didn't come from Muhammad. It came from someone who's just kind of giving them the gist of the meaning. And Shabir's going to go on to say that later they had to deal with this because now people have the Quran memorized in all these different ways. And that's why Uthman has to crack down and say, well, we need to do away with all these other ways of reciting the Quran that just give the gist of the meaning and not the precise wording. So notice, Muslims of the world, according to what Shabir Ally is telling you here, it's Muslims today who are obsessed with precise wording. During the time of Muhammad, no, just get the basic idea. Get the basic idea of what the Quran is saying, and that's enough for you. And you can memorize the basic idea rather than the precise wording. What are your thoughts on this, Hatun?
Just a question. What is this message of Quran is? I really still don't understand the message of Quran, which early Muslims had to focus on. Mm-hmm. That's just something question mark in my mind. But so today we've got printing press. Today we've got check Google. If the words of the Quran is being changed, it is very easy to spot it and then correct it. Mm-hmm. But in 7th century, we didn't have that luxury. So I would think, yeah, it should be more important in 7th century versus in 21st century. But according to Shabir Ally, people didn't care about dot by dot, letter by letter, sound by sound, word by word application of the Quran. But in 21st century now, since we've got Sheikh Google, since we've got printing press, we need to know what it is, dot by dot, sound by sound, letter by letter thing is.
Yeah, so everyone, I hope you're getting all of this, because notice, according to Shabir's theory, the Quran gets more clear over the centuries than it was at the beginning, right? It starts off as a jumbled mess in 7 different dialects where they're giving 7 different versions of the Quran, even though we don't even know what those versions are, even if they apply to dialects. But there are these 7 different ways of the Quran. The Quran is revealed in 7 different ways. And in addition to that problem, separately from it, people didn't have to memorize any precise wording, even of those 7 different ways of reciting the Quran. They could just memorize the important point or the gist, and they could actually memorize it and recite it, because the important thing was to understand what Allah is telling you to do, not any sort of precise memorization of the Quran. It's later Muslims who become obsessed with getting the Quran exactly right, but Muhammad's own generation, the generation of Muhammad. Muhammad and his companions, they didn't care about the precise wording so much. So notice, it's later Muslims who decide what the precise wording is. And they have to say, oh, no, we think you were just quoting the gist. No, we think you were quoting one of the different ahruf. Yeah. So let's go with this one. And they do this over time until you finally get down to the 1924 Cairo edition of the Quran, and they finally figured out what the real Quran is. And that's the one that's been perfectly preserved for all time. Guys, do you understand what a mess this is? This is a mess. It starts off as a mess. It's still a mess today. And Muslim leaders are saying there's no mess here, perfect preservation. Everyone knows it. Everyone believes it. This is amazing stuff. This is wild.
Just also point out that when it talks about they were focusing on the message of Islam, as they were focusing on the foundation of Islam, that was how to do your prayer and tashahhud and the Quran. Mm-hmm. So Quran was part of that, according to Muslims. But it all messed up. Of course, Muslims have to defend. No, it's perfectly preserved. It is all complementary to one another, because if it is not perfectly preserved, that means Allah failed. That means Islam is failed. That means you have to give it up. That goes under that logic.
Mm-hmm. We have a comment here. It says, Shabir Ally is on the Israeli payroll. He is lying for money, according to Anonymous Ali on my channel. So Shabir is now being accused of being on the Israeli payroll for saying, notice.
I thought that was you in the beginning.
Notice the Israelis are, so now the Israelis are paying Shabir Ally to tell Muslims the basic facts about their Quran. So now the Israelis are in on telling Muslims the facts about the Quran, because Muslim leaders just won't do it. Muslim apologists just won't do it. The Muslim leaders and apologists will only lie. And so now the Israel is paying Shabir Ally to speak the truth. This is awesome stuff. All right, should we go on?
Yep.
All right. Shabir keeps giving us. Shabir is the gift that keeps on giving here.
And in fact, if the Prophet Muhammad, on whom be peace, had insisted on his followers that they should pay due importance to the wording of the Quran to get every letter and sound correctly, then that may have detracted from the focus on getting the message across and implementing that in the lives of new Muslims. So with all of the challenges that the community faced in that early phase, it was important for the Muslims to focus on the meaning and the message and to circulate that. So one Muslim would go tell another one, look, we got a new teaching in the form of the Quran. The other one is asking, what does the Quran say? And then he repeats the saying and the teaching of the Quran without necessarily getting precisely the same words in which they were first delivered by the Prophet Muhammad, on whom be peace. So there was this period in which Muslims had the opportunity to teach others the Quran without insisting on the precise words. But then it came a phase when if we allow this to continue ad infinitum, you can imagine that somebody gives it in their own words, and then somebody else gives that new summary in their own words, and then the third person gives it in their own words. Then eventually the whole message can become diluted. The original words will be lost.
So now Shabir has added another part to his theory. If Muhammad had insisted on the precise, correct wording of these Quran revelations, it might have turned people off, and they might have not really got the point if they're all focused on memorizing, the actual wording, correct wording of the Quran, and not just the gist and learning it in their own words, however they want to say it. And so it would actually have hurt the Muslim community if there had only been just one Quran and they had focused on precise wording. And so he had to let them slide on this, but you can't let that go on forever. So eventually someone has to crack down, and that's going to be, of course, Uthman and his merry band of scholars. But notice the theory. In order to get the point across, it was more important to get the sort of meaning of the verses rather than the precise wording. So Muslims focus on just learning the meaning of, you know, the revelations, and memorizing them, memorizing the meaning, so they could have it whatever words they wanted, as long as they get the correct meaning, the correct teaching, right? And so that's how they're memorizing it. But you can't keep that up forever. That's how Muhammad's generation did it, but you can't just keep doing that, right? They've got these 7 different ways of reciting the Quran, and they're reciting just the meaning and so on, and all that's fine. You can't insist on precise wording. But later Muslims realize you can't just keep doing this, otherwise, you know, these people are going to come up with their own, you know, they're going to say it means this, and then the next group's going to say it means this, and so on, and you're just going to end up with a big mess. And therefore, we need to figure out the precise wording later, after the time of Muhammad. What do you think, Hatun?
So, Umar, Hisham, Ubay bin Ka'b, when they were getting upset with one another regarding the way they were reciting the Quran, actually that was not even the case. Just when Muhammad struck Ubay bin Ka'b from his chest, he was just like, I don't know, maybe practicing if he's powerful, that Ubay bin Ka'b gets sweat or not. It has nothing to do with the way they were kind of, recitation wasn't even important. Recitation wasn't even important when Umar wanted to jump over other person during the prayer. But suddenly recitation becomes so important only 20 years after the death of Muhammad, because of the recitation, Muslims were calling other Muslims kafir. Mm-hmm. Within 20 years, Muslims understood, yup, that is very serious now, that dot by dot, letter by letter, sound by sound needs to be practiced now. Therefore, he gets rid of all the Qurans, he orders everything to be burned, and then recitation suddenly becomes so important, word by word, dot by dot, sound by sound, letter by letter. He sends 9 Qurans with 9 people who know how to recite it to the different places. And something happens within like approximate 60 years after that. Ibn Hajjaj suddenly does the same thing. So recitation becomes so important within 20 years. Yet it wasn't important for Muhammad. Therefore, I would put together Uthman had more power over the word of Allah than Muhammad. And it is the same. Today's Muslims, they are screaming that Quran is dot by dot, letter by letter, sound by sound, exactly the same. And Imams are spending lots of years in Muslim colleges to learn that 10 different ways of reciting the Quran. Yet it was revealed in 7 different ways. But anyway, so they're kind of learning in that 10 different ways. And it takes a lot of time to memorize that and learn it and keep in your mind. Yet it was not even important to Muhammad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I want to add another problem here, because notice, ladies and gentlemen, one, you have the facts, and then you have your hypothesis for explaining those facts, right? So we have the facts. We have different versions of the Quran with different words in Arabic. We have in the Muslim sources, Uthman ordering the Qurans be burned to cover up all the differences all the way back then. You have sources talking about entire chapters coming up missing. You have more than 100 verses coming up missing just from Surah 33. You have all of these different problems, and so the question is,
don't forget the sheep.
Yeah, and the sheep, verses being eaten by a sheep that are no longer in there today. Hey, you didn't. Where'd you get that?
I drew it.
You drew that? Hey, we should have a contest. We should make that available and say, how do you caption this, right? In other words, people get to write in their own words, and then we'll have like a contest and see who wins the contest for the best.
We did the drawing Muhammad context couple of weeks ago. Mm-hmm. Oh, Muslims got so upset. They are still sending me emails that why I did that. But pictures were very good.
But that one's perfect. Those with the without the words filled in, people love that, because then they get to insert whatever words, and then you have a contest on who.
Yeah. Who is better Allah?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Sorry for distracting.
So, what was I talking about now? Oh, I wanted to draw attention to. So you basically have the facts, right? We have the same facts. We have, you know, different versions of the Quran. You have all these interesting points about differences and changes in the Quran down through the centuries. But then you have, how are you explaining that, right? Shabir is explaining it by saying, well, maybe lots of Muslims were just allowed to, you know, memorize the gist, and that's how they ended up passing on the way they memorized it, which wasn't the precise wording, and so they ended up with these differences, and that's why Uthman eventually had to you know, burn all these things. Keep in mind, that's not what the Muslim sources say. The Muslim sources don't say, and you know, Muhammad revealed it, and then people just memorized it in whatever way they want, right? That's a theory that Shabir is using to explain the evidence, right? But there are problems with Shabir's explanation. There are problems with Shabir's hypothesis, namely that even the best reciters of the Quran did not agree with the Quran that was put out. So I'm just going to give one example because we've been going an hour and a half already, and we still have a couple more video clips to get through. But let me give you one example. This is Jami' at-Tirmidhi, number 3104. And this is actually a long section. I want to get to this point, this quotation at the down towards the end from Ibn Masud. Right? So this is a quotation from Ibn Masud here. Now, who is Ibn Masud? Muhammad was asked, who should we learn the Quran from? Muhammad said, if you want to learn the Quran from anyone, learn it from 4 people. And the top person on his list, the best reciter of the Quran, according to Muhammad himself, was Ibn Masud, Abdullah ibn Masud. So notice this part right here. Az-Zuri said, so this is after Zayd ibn Thabit came out with his edition of the Quran, and Uthman orders Muslims to hand over their copies of the Quran so they can be burned. And Uthman is issuing an official version of the Quran, which ultimately comes down, you know, that changed too over time, but it's basically the Quran that Muslims want to go back to today. Az-Zuri said, Ubaydullah bin Abdullah bin Utbah informed me that Abdullah ibn Masud disliked Zayd ibn Thabit. Disliked Zayd ibn Thabit copying the Musahif. So that's Zayd ibn Thabit. That's the guy who your Quran goes back to today, Muslims, right? Abdullah ibn Masud disliked Zayd ibn Thabit copying the Musahif, and he said, "O you Muslim people, avoid copying the Mus'haf and recitation of this man." So you have the recitation, then you have the Mus'haf, which is the physical copy of the Quran, so an actual written text. Avoid copying the Mus'haf and recitation of this man. By Allah, when I accepted Islam, he was but in the loins of a disbelieving man. In other words, I was learning the Quran from Muhammad when this guy's not even born yet, meaning Zayd ibn Thabit. And it was regarding this that Abdullah ibn Masud said, "O people of Al-Iraq, keep the Musahif that are with you and conceal them. For indeed Allah said, and whoever conceals something, he shall come with what he concealed on the day of judgment." So meet Allah with the Musahif. Now, notice what Abdullah ibn Masud here said. "O people of Iraq, keep the Qurans that are with you." What Qurans are with them? These are the Qurans that Uthman is ordering people to hand over and burn so that he can issue the Zayd ibn Thabit international version, right? And Ibn Masud is saying, don't hand over your Quran so these people can destroy them. Keep the Qurans that you have with you. Don't take their Quran. Don't accept their Quran from them. What Quran is that? That's the Quran that Muslims use today. Now, this is amazing, ladies and gentlemen, because you got two possibilities here. Either Muhammad knew what he was talking about with the Quran, or he didn't. If Muhammad knew what he was talking about, then the best reciter of the Quran, the guy who knew the Quran best, was Abdullah ibn Masud. Abdullah ibn Masud looks at your Quran today and says, don't take that. Take this one that they're trying to burn. So he says, don't trust that one. Trust this one, trust the Quran that they're trying to burn. So if you trust Muhammad, then you should trust Ibn Masud and not trust your Quran today. Alternatively, if you decide you're just going to trust the 1924 Cairo edition, which ultimately goes back to Zayd ibn Thabit's version, if you say, nope, we're going to trust Zayd ibn Thabit's edition, well, great, then you can't trust Abdullah ibn Masud, and therefore you can't trust your prophet that he knew what he was talking about with the Quran. So your own prophet didn't know what he was talking about with the Quran. Guys, do you not see it? How do you not see this, Muslims? How do you not see him? How do you not see this? You're saying we can trust this Quran, perfectly preserved. And Muhammad's top reciter of the Quran says, whatever you do, don't take that Quran. Keep your own Qurans. Don't hand them over. They're going to burn the true Quran and give you this other Quran. This is amazing stuff. This is amazing stuff. But keep in mind, ladies and gentlemen, perfect preservation right down to the letter.
Miracle of Islam.
It's a miracle. Islam has so many miracles. They got the miracle of perfect preservation, the miracle of reinterpretation. They've got all the miracles. Should we go on?
All they need is Allah to practice the miracle of communication and communicate better. Yes, we can continue.
All right. More from Shabir Ally.
So how to capture the original words? It is said that the Caliph Osman, on whom be peace, commissioned a committee of some Muslims who were known to be good reciters of the Quran, skilled in the Arabic language, so that they could write it properly. He commissioned this committee to produce a copy of the Quran and to make copies of that and send those copies to the various parts of the Muslim empire. There are reports as well that prior to him, a previous caliph, Abu Bakr, had commissioned one of the persons in this committee, Zayd bin Thabit, to make such a collection, and that collection had been kept in his possession, the possession of the caliph, until he passed away, and then passed on to the second caliph, who then, on his death, left it in the care of his daughter, who, Hafsa, was a wife of the Prophet Muhammad, on whom be peace, and therefore for Muslims, one of the mothers of the believers. So these are all trustworthy individuals caring for and preserving the Quran.
So, Abu Bakr put together, had a version of the Quran put together because he realized that lots of people were just learning the gist and they needed to fix this problem. So a lot of people just were going around reciting their own version. So Abu Bakr said, you know what, we need to fix this. We need to fix this. And so Abu Bakr had a copy of the Quran put out, and then it's passed on to Umar, the caliph, and then Umar passes it on to his daughter Hafsa. Any thoughts on this, Hatun?
Also, just addition, the reason Abu Bakr compiled the Quran because people were dying in the Battle of Yamama. Therefore, they needed to put together the Quran so it doesn't like mess up more. And just notice, Quran doesn't go to Aisha. Quran goes to Hafsa, Umar, and then Hafsa. And then what's going to happen is under Abu Bakr, it is the Zayd bin Thabit who is putting the Quran together. And that is the guy Ibn Masud says in Timida Khan, I don't trust this guy. And Shabir Ally just expressed they were all trustworthy. According to early Muslims, no, he wasn't trustworthy.
Absolutely. And let me just give you a quote on what Hatun mentioned there. This is from Ibn Abi Dawud's Kitab al-Masahif. So basically when Muhammad died, then a bunch of people who had only converted to Islam because they were terrified of Muhammad thought that they could leave Islam. And so Abu Bakr launched what were called the apostate wars, and so he has to go fight all kinds of groups. Anyway, Abu Bakr has to go out and fight at the battle of, we say Yamama, specifically because if we say Yamama, then a bunch of you go, oh, you said Yamama, right? So we say Yamama, but here's a passage from Ibn Abi Dawud's Kitab al-Masahif. So basically, Abu Bakr sends Muslims who had the Quran memorized out to fight in this battle, and they get slaughtered. They ultimately win, but so many of the people who had parts of the Quran memorized died that parts of the Quran were lost forever. And why is this relevant? Well, because what Muslims believe today is there were all kinds of companions who had the entire Quran memorized, and they all survived for years. Well, let's read what your own sources say. Ibn Abi Dawud's Kitab al-Masahif. Many of the passages of the Quran that were sent down were known by those who died on the day of Yamama, but they were not known by those who survived them, nor were they written down, Nor had Abu Bakr, Umar, or Uthman by that time collected the Quran, nor were they found with even one person after them. Did you catch that? Let's read it again. Many of the passages of the Quran, of what? Passages of what? Of the Quran, that were sent down to Muhammad were known by those who died on the day of Yamama. So they were known by people who were in that battle, Muslims who were in that battle, who died in that battle. There were passages revealed in the Quran that were known by people who died in that battle, but they were not known by those who survived them, nor were they written down. So other people didn't have them memorized, nor were they written down, so they didn't have a physical copy, nor had Abu Bakr, Umar, or Uthman by that time collected the Quran, nor were they found with even one person after them. Now, this is amazing, because every Muslim wants to tell me, nope, there were all these companions, and they all had the Quran completely memorized, beginning to end. They could recite every word of it. And we read your sources, and it say, nope, there were a bunch of people who went into battle, and they died. They died in battle. And they were the only people who knew certain parts of the Quran. So we couldn't find the parts that they had memorized. We couldn't find them with even one person, and no one had written them down. Now, if no person knows them and you don't have them written down, where have these gone? They've gone bye-bye. Yeah, you lost them. And as Hatun pointed out, ladies and gentlemen, according to this passage, that's why Abu Bakr said we need a physical copy of the Quran. We can't, Muslims today, oh, the Quran can't be corrupted. We've got the power of memorization. And Abu Bakr realizes this is a horrible way of doing things because the people who have it memorized die. Right? And so, and what's amazing, Hatun? What's amazing is that the Muslims we can read right off their pages. We can read right from their sources that the reason Abu Bakr decided to put the Quran in a physical book form was because so much of it was lost in battle. And the Muslims who are watching this will go, no, that's not true, because there were all these Muslims and they all had it memorized, and memorization is this perfect process, and none of the Quran was lost. And that's the amazing part. Muslims, where did you get that from? You got that from your leaders. Your leaders contradict your sources. We're reading your sources and saying your leaders are lying. You're looking at your leaders going, no, my leaders tell me the truth, so the sources must be lying. Abu Bakr must be lying. The Hadith are lying. All the Hadith collectors are lying. All our early sources are lying. These guys are all lying. We trust our leaders, not Muhammad's companions. You understand how, gosh, this is so amazing. Our leaders say perfect preservation right down to the letter. All our sources say that's a complete load of nonsense. We'll believe our leaders, not our sources, not Muhammad's companions, not Aisha when she talks about verses being eaten by sheep, not Aisha when she talks about more than 100 verses coming up missing from Surah 33 when they realized that all the people who had memorized those verses were dead. Who cares what our sources say? We'll stick with our leaders who lie to us non-stop every day of our lives. What is this religion that it convinces you to listen to non-stop liars? All right, go ahead, Hatun. Sorry, I had to go on a little rant.
The part of the Quran which you said bye-bye because people, when they died, they took the Quran with them. Can I just remind the people the number of those people? 70 people died in the Battle of Yamama. Then Muslim world freaked out. They are going to lose whole of the Quran. 70 people. That already shows actually no. Quran wasn't in the hearts and minds of people. 70 people. And they took the Quran with them to wherever they went. End of their life. And then from that, what we have is, we've got the second Quran. So that's the first Quran. And then we've got the second Quran under Uthman. And then we've got the same issue of memorization. As within like 20 years, Muslims are calling one another kafir in the battle. Therefore, that shows memorization was very, very weak. The way people are reciting now identifies other person as kafir. Memorization failed in the completion of the first Quran under the Abu Bakr. Memorization failed in the completion of the second Quran under Uthman. And then, of course, it was already failed at the time of Muhammad. So, And remember, David already expressed, Zayd bin Thabit is the one who is responsible to put the Quran together in the both of occasions. And one of the person which Muhammad says take the Quran from, Ibn Masud says, don't trust this guy. I don't trust this guy. Hold your Quran to yourself. So he's not very reliable at all. And then Uthman orders everything to be burned, and then Quran is being put together under one harf or ahruf, if you say, like plural is like in one version, which Shabir Ali was saying, oh, it might be the limit or the age, those kind of things. But Uthman makes that one version of the Quran. And then he sends people to different cities with the one version of the Quran. I think it's all so sad for me. It's like so sad for Muslims. In a sense, Allah was not even capable to protect his own word. Muhammad was not even giving attention to the Quran, which he was going to give it to the Muslims. Yet today's Muslims simply say it is perfectly preserved by memory as well as by written.
Mm-hmm. Here we have again from Three Idiots. That's just the name. I'm not calling anyone idiot here, but the name is Three Idiots. Again, I'm assuming this is joking, ladies and gentlemen, but this would be a typical Muslim response. David, obviously you are lying, or show us where does it say that all the Hufaz have died. So Hufaz are the people who've memorized the Quran. Yeah, that is what you are claiming. Hadith said Hufaz are dying, not died. No, that's not the passage we read. Again, Ibn Abi Dawud, Kitab al-Masahif. If you understand words, many of the passages of the Quran that were sent down were known by those who died on the day of Yamama. Notice, it's not one passage, it's many passages of the Quran that were sent down were known by those who died on the day of Yamama, but they were not known by those who survived them. They weren't known by the people who didn't die. They weren't known by those who survived them, nor were they written down. If they weren't known by the people who survived and weren't known and weren't written down, who had them? Nor had Abu Bakr, Umar, or Uthman by that time collected the Quran, nor were they found with even one person after them. Notice, many passages of the Quran that were sent down were known by the people who died in that battle, but they were not found with even one person after them, and they hadn't been written down, and the Quran hadn't been collected. So, again, I'm going to assume this is a joke, or I'm not answering any more questions because you don't understand words, right? All right. Anything else we want to cover before we watch these last couple clips?
No, I think we can move on to the next one.
All right. Shabir Ali keeps it going.
Now, when Uthman radiallahu anh wanted to commission this committee to make copies of this, he then got Zayd bin Thabit, who made the initial copy, together with the others to go through back over the whole process, collecting the pieces again, comparing with this original copy, and then making further copies and sending them to various parts of the Muslim empire. And so Muslims have made efforts at various stages to preserve, first, the meaning and message of the Quran, secondly, the text of the Quran in a written form, and thirdly, to copy it and send it out to various parts of the Muslim empire so that Muslims would have a reliable written record in addition to the memorized text of the Quran, so that both memory and writing would serve as the two modes in which the Quran has been protected and preserved and passed on verbatim to Muslims throughout the generations.
I can't believe he said passed on verbatim after everything else he said. So putting all of this together from Shabir, we have one more clip, but putting all of this together, you had Muhammad. He gives the Quran out in 7 different ways, but we don't know what those 7 different ways refer to. Could be dialects. We don't know. And a bunch of people memorized the Quran, but not the correct, precise wording. They just memorized it in, you know, a way that would help them, which is amazing because the Muslims tell me the Quran is so brilliant, so perfect, and so perfectly easy to memorize, and blah 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 blah. Why would people change it and then memorize it in some other way when the original way is so perfect and easy to memorize? But anyway, people were allowed during early Islam to memorize it however they want, as long as they got the point. And then later, Abu Bakr realized we can't let this go on forever. When, if you read the actual sources, the reason Abu Bakr compiled the Quran was because so many people died in battle who had parts memorized that were lost, and he realizes we need a physical copy because guess what? If we have a physical copy that's safe in someone's house, that's better than having people memorize it and then the people die and then we lose it. So we need a physical copy. So the reason Muslims have a physical copy of the Quran today is because so many people died and lost parts of it. The entire reason you Muslims have a physical copy of the Quran is because so much of it was lost in your perfectly preserved book. So then you had that book. Then Uthman realizes, wait a minute, there are people, you know, we wrote down a copy of it, and Abu Bakr had that copy. He passed it on to Umar, who passed it on to his daughter. But Muslims across our empire now are reciting the Quran in different ways. We need to send out an official version of the Quran. So he has Zayd ibn Thabit do this work again. And when Muhammad's top reciters of the Quran, people like Ibn Masud, saw this Quran, they said, no, this is wrong. Do not accept this. Keep the Qurans, hide them. Do not hand them over to this man to burn them. And according to Shabir Ally, that's how Allah passed on his perfect book. So that now, whether you recite it or whether you have the text, you have it verbatim. What a mess. And even after that, it didn't work because I told you still got 37 versions. My goodness.
So, something happened after it being verbalated along the way. That one perfect Quran under the Uthman give birth to 21st century's 37 different Arabic Qurans. Mm-hmm. Miracle of Islam. It's all miracle of Islam. Something happens in 700s towards 900s. When we look at the Islamic tradition, they're talking about, actually there were 50 different Arabic Qurans was out there and circulating. In somehow the Quran which Muhammad, just a side note by the way, Uthman's Quran is not seen by Muhammad because Muhammad was long way dead. Abu Bakr's Quran was not seen by Muhammad, and he never said, yeah, this is the one perfect Quran, I give permission, because Muhammad was long dead. Mm-hmm. Even though they try to put the one perfect Quran, in somehow things happened, even in 1400s, Muslims give birth to different Arabic Qurans.
Mm-hmm. And so, ladies and gentlemen, this just looks like one massive mess. It looks like the messiest process you could possibly come up with, right? Hey, I'm going to give you the perfect book. It's a perfect reflection of the perfect book, the perfect tablet that's in heaven. And I'm going to reveal it in 7 different ways. And you don't have to memorize it the way I reveal it. You can memorize it however you want, because later Muslim leaders who weren't even given permission by me are going to come along, and they're going to destroy all the versions they don't like. And even my top scholars, my top experts on the Quran, they're going to disagree with this Quran, but don't listen to them. Listen to the other guys. And then after they burn all the evidence so that no one can even look into this, and after centuries of changes and rechanges and all kinds of changes upon changes, you'll eventually get down to the 20th century. And then I want you to take one book, completely ignore all the other versions, and lie about everything. And that is the miracle of Islam.
So how would you respond to the basic objection on, so if even the time of Muhammad, let's say Quran revealed in 7 different ahruf, and in somehow in early Muslims had more than one Quran, which Quran is the correct one? Or how can still, while Allah reveals in the 7 different ways, still he's got one eternal tablet there. How do you do this calculation? 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus makes 1.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's another, Muslims have a lot of these problems, but yeah, if you have these 7 different ways and these are all somehow one tablet in heaven, then yeah, it's 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 equals 1. It's a miracle, another miracle. So yeah, wow, ladies and gentlemen, perfect preservation, right down to the letter. All right, we got one more clip. Should we watch it?
Yep.
Now, of course, we have to explain how did these variety of readings still manifest. Well, the text in which Uthman, on whom be peace, Uthman, may God be pleased with him, had preserved the Quran, was written without vowel points and without dots that distinguish between look-alike letters. We'll have to come back in a subsequent segment to explain this in further detail, but in a nutshell, the text that Uthman prepared could be interpreted, could be read in a variety of ways, and that's one of the reasons why we have, surviving to this day, a variety of recitations, some of which may go back to the time of the Prophet Muhammad, on whom be peace. In fact, it is a common Muslim belief that we are not allowed to invent anything in the Quran, and it is generally presumed that all of these readings must somehow go back to the early teachers, even those within the lifetime of the Prophet Muhammad, on whom be peace, those who heard the Quran directly from the Prophet, peace be upon him, himself, the messenger of God.
So now we have Shabir's third explanation for why we have different versions of the perfectly preserved Quran. Right? So remember, because ladies and gentlemen, you need to learn this. You need to learn this so that when you're talking to your Muslim friend, you can explain this to them, and then you can show them the clips from Shabir Ally to verify that this is the new emerging position on these different versions of the Quran. But one, the Quran was revealed in 7 ahruf, even though we don't know what ahruf means, but there are 7 different Qurans, right? So that's one. 2, lots of early people, the time of Muhammad, they didn't care so much about memorizing it word for word. Who cares about that? Who cares about the exact wording? Just get the main point. And you can memorize it however you want and put it whatever words you want, as long as you memorize, as long as you get the point across. Later Muslims, after the time of Muhammad, they had to crack down on this, and they had to pick which ones were the original wording and which ones were false. And then, so those were 2 of Shabir's responses. But then even in the Quran that's sent out by Uthman, remember when he burned all of the other ones, and then he sends out his official version, and then there are Muslims like Ibn Masud saying, don't take that Quran. Do not take that Quran. Keep your Qurans. Don't hand them over. They're going to burn your Qurans, right? He's saying, don't accept this new Quran, accept the Quran that you already have. So notice that this is a key point. This isn't simply someone who memorized the Quran in some, to get the gist, and he had the wrong Quran, and so his Quran needs to be burned. This is Muhammad's top reciter of the Quran. If anyone knows the Quran, it's this guy. He's saying, don't take their version, keep the version that I gave you. And Uthman is saying, no, hand those over so I can burn them, right? This is a mess no matter what you're doing, right? But even in this version that's put out by Uthman, you don't have the diacritical marks. And without those marks, the words can be different things. In other words, you guys understand, in Arabic, there are all these, they put these dots in different places and so on. And depending on where those dots go, the words mean different things. Well, Uthman sends out his Quran, but it doesn't have the marks. And therefore, you don't know what the words mean. And so Shabir is saying, this is another source of the differences that we have today in different versions of the Quran. Part of the reason we have different versions of the Quran today is because they didn't have the marks back then. Later Muslims put them in, but different Muslims put in different marks and came up with different versions of the Quran. And so now we have 3 separate ways we ended up with different versions of the Quran, even though according to Muslim apologists and almost 100% of Muslims worldwide, the Quran has been perfectly preserved right down to the letter from the time it was revealed to Muhammad. Hatun, What do you got?
Can I just question something he said? He's talking about text is the one which gives birth to the different recitations. So it is Uthman's text without dots, without any diacritical marks, giving birth to the different recitations. It has nothing to do with like just the recitation by itself. And of course, in the beginning, like he expressed, actually, we don't know what is Aruf. Scholars are arguing about it, and at the end, Allah knows best. But what we have is now, he thinks, okay, this is all the Aruf, and then as you add the dots, it's gonna come together in 7 different ways or in 10 different Arabic Qurans. But if anyone speaks Arabic and kind of knows the basics, from one Arabic like dots with letter without dots, you can actually simply just change the place of the dots and then put together 29 different words. That would be like letter nun, which is like smiling face without dots. In Arabic, just put those 3 letters together. You can put together 29 Arabic words. Okay, that's the text of Uthman without any dots. You can produce lots of ways. But even before you go to that one, in Arabic, fight, kill, meat, and elephant are the same consonantal letters. Just when you change the dots, the way you place the dots for the consonantal letters and the critical marks, meet, elephant, fight, and kill will be in the sentence, which one you want. Therefore, when we look at the certain hadiths, we see a narrator says, oh, I don't know if Muhammad said meat or elephant, because text was already without dots, messed up. But what happens is 21st century Muslim says, actually, dot by dot, while text didn't have the dot, letter by letter, sound by sound, and the dots are the which affecting the sound, it's all perfectly preserved. That doesn't look very perfect preservation to me at all.
Yeah, it looks like the exact opposite as far as I can tell. But I think we deserve an appearance of the shredded Quran there. I just put the shredded Quran on the screen, ladies and gentlemen. If you're new here and you don't know what the shredded Quran refers to, that's from Surah 15, verses 90, 91 and 92, which refer to the Quran being shredded. And yeah, you can see why we might want to say that the Quran has actually been shredded. What a messy, sloppy process for a book that's been perfectly preserved. All right.
I am a bit disappointed that you thought Quran must be fit enough to have 6 packs.
It's shredded.
You know, you can, when you look from the distance, you kind of think like it has 6 packs.
It does. It's shredded.
Not fit enough though.
What?
Quran is not fit enough. Not like, I don't think it did that much exercise because it got burned very easily, destroyed very easily.
Do you guys use the word shredded over there in the UK?
We do, yeah.
You mean shredded when someone works out and they get all their muscles? Yeah. So double meaning there.
Yeah.
All right, guys. I see there are a lot of people over in the super chat, but we've been going over 2 hours, and I have to record a video, so gonna have to take a rain check on. Yeah, there are too many. They're like looks like 25 super chats. All right, yeah, it would take another half hour to go through these at least, so we're gonna have to go ahead and sign off here. Hatun, how can people stay in touch with you, follow what you're doing, support your work, any of that?
So if you are in England, please do come to Speaker's Corner. If you are not in England, you can follow our work on YouTube through DCCI Ministries. And if you are committed Christian and if you want to disciple ex-Muslims, please do send me email, because we are currently doing online disciple of ex-Muslims internationally and we need help in that area. But easiest way is just go to YouTube, find DCCI Ministries, and you can follow us over there.
All right, and ladies and gentlemen, I should have up a video later tonight, and tomorrow I'll be live again with Shameless Sam Shamoon. Wait, someone's saying at Shamoon in the chat. Is Sam actually there? Because I might have to block him. He's a troublemaker who always spreads complete nonsense. But I'll be on. Sam says, did David speak for 95% of the time again? Sam always finds something to complain about. He's a total hater. That's why no one should listen to him or follow his live streams. All right. Catch y'all later. Again, video later on. Did I remember to put a... Yes, I put a link to Hatun's channel in the description box. So be sure to subscribe to her channel and follow the videos they put out there. And see y'all tomorrow. Be here with Sam Shamoon.